My son looked me in the eye and said, "Don't expect a penny from me, Mother. You've taken enough." He had no idea he was talking to the woman who owned 70% of his company. My name is Donna Martinez, and I'm 74 years old. For the past 5 years since my husband passed, I've lived in the same small house where we raised our children. The paint is chipping, the carpet is worn, and my neighbors probably think I'm just another widow scraping by on Social Security. They're not entirely wrong. I do clip coupons. I do shop at thrift stores. I do drive a 15-year-old Honda with rust spots and a rattling exhaust. But what they don't know is that I choose to live this way. Back in 1978, my husband Roberto and I started a small construction company called Southwest Building Solutions. We began with 1 truck, 2 hammers, and a $5,000 loan from my mother. Roberto handled the construction crews, and I managed the books, permits, and client relations from our kitchen table. I remember those early days so clearly. Roberto would come home covered in dust and concrete powder, his work boots caked with mud. We'd sit at this same kitchen table, counting the day's receipts and planning our next job. Some nights we'd only made enough for groceries, but we never stopped believing we were building something bigger than ourselves. The first real breakthrough came in 1982, when we won the contract to build a shopping center in Tempe. It was our biggest job yet, worth $200,000. I'll never forget the day Roberto came home with that signed contract, lifting me up and spinning me around in our tiny kitchen like we were teenagers again. "Mija," he said, "this is it. This is our ticket to something real." From there, the business grew steadily. We hired our first full-time crew in 1985. By 1990, we had 3 crews working on projects across Phoenix. We built strip malls, office, buildings, and hundreds of homes in the growing suburbs. Every dollar we made, we put back into the company. We bought better equipment, hired skilled foremen, and built a reputation for quality work delivered on time. Roberto always insisted on incorporating the business in my name alone. "If something happens to me," he'd say, "you need to be protected. You need to be the one making the decisions." I thought he was being overly cautious, but I went along with it. In 1992, when we officially incorporated as Southwest Building Solutions, all the paperwork listed me as the sole owner and Roberto as the chief operations officer. It seemed like a technicality at the time. For 20 years, we built homes, commercial buildings, and shopping centers across Arizona. We reinvested every profit back into the business. When Roberto died of a heart attack in 2018, everyone assumed the company would fold within months. The local newspaper even ran a small article titled, "Local Construction Pioneer Passes Away. Future of Company Uncertain." What they didn't realize was that Roberto's foresight had protected not just me, but the entire business. I owned 100% of Southwest Building Solutions, which by then had grown into a $40 million company with contracts across 3 states. But I kept that information private, hidden in trusts and legal structures that even my own children knew nothing about. My son Michael had been working for the company for 12 years, climbing from entry-level project manager to vice president of operations. He started right after college, eager to prove himself in the family business. I watched him learn every aspect of construction, from reading blueprints to managing subcontractors to negotiating with city planners. He earned every promotion through hard work and talent, but he never knew that every paycheck, every bonus, and every company benefit came from a business his mother owned outright. Michael married a woman named Christine 5 years ago. She's a real estate agent who specializes in luxury homes in North Scottsdale. Christine drives a white BMW, carries Louis Vuitton handbags, and gets her nails done every week at an expensive salon. Together, they live in a 4,000-square-foot house with granite countertops, a backyard pool, and a 3-car garage filled with his BMW, her BMW, and a weekend motorcycle. Christine made it clear from the beginning that she considered my modest lifestyle embarrassing to their social circle. At their wedding reception, I overheard her telling her friends, "Michael's mother is sweet, but she's very simple. She doesn't really understand how people in our position are supposed to live." I watched my son change over the years. The boy who used to help me plant tomatoes in our backyard garden became a man who was too busy for family dinners. The young man who once called me every Sunday began making excuses about work trips and client meetings. The son who used to say, "Mom, I'll always take care of you," started treating me like a financial burden. The transformation was gradual, but undeniable. Michael began wearing expensive suits to work instead of the jeans and work shirts he'd started with. He traded his pickup truck for a luxury sedan. He joined an exclusive golf club and started spending weekends at charity galas and networking events. The more successful he became, the less time he seemed to have for the woman who had raised him. Last month, my water heater failed, and I mentioned it to Michael during one of our increasingly rare phone conversations. I wasn't asking for money. I had already called a repair service, but I thought he might want to know why I'd sound distracted. 3 days later, Michael showed up at my house unannounced. He was wearing one of his expensive suits, the kind that cost more than I spend on groceries in 3 months. He walked through my living room like he was inspecting a condemned building, shaking his head at the worn furniture and faded wallpaper. "Mom, we need to have a serious conversation about your situation," he said, settling onto my old sofa with obvious reluctance. "What situation is that, mijo?" I asked, offering him coffee from the same pot I'd been using for 20 years. Michael waved. "Away the coffee. This house. Your finances. The constant need for repairs and the way you keep hinting around for help." I sat down across from him, keeping my voice calm. "I haven't asked you for money, Michael." "Not directly. No. But it's always something, isn't it? The water heater, the roof leaking last winter, your car making strange noises. You know Christine and I are trying to build our own financial security. We have the kids' college funds to consider, our mortgage, my business expenses. I understand you have responsibilities." Michael stood up and started pacing, the way he used to do as a teenager when he was working up the courage to ask for something. But this time, he wasn't asking for anything. He was preparing to take something away. "Look, Mom, I love you, but I need to be honest. Christine and I have been talking, and we've decided that we can't keep being your safety net. You're 74 years old. You should have planned better for retirement. You should have saved more, invested differently, made better choices." Each word felt like a small slap, but I kept my expression neutral. Michael continued. "I've worked incredibly hard to get where I am. I'm making 6 figures now. I'm being considered for a promotion to senior vice president, and Christine and I are finally starting to see real success. We can't let family obligations drag us down." "Drag you down?" "You know what I mean. We have our own family to think about now, our own future. And frankly, Mom, I'm tired of feeling guilty every time you call with another problem." I folded my hands in my lap and waited. Michael took a deep breath and delivered his final blow. "So, here's what I need to say, and I'm saying it because I respect you too much to let you keep hoping for something that isn't going to happen. Don't expect a penny from me going forward. Not for house repairs, not for medical bills, not for anything. You need to figure out how to live within your means, whatever those actually are." The silence in the room was complete except for the ticking of the wall clock Roberto had bought me for our 10th anniversary. Finally, I nodded. "I see." "I hope you do see, Mom. I hope you understand that this is about being realistic. About accepting responsibility for your own choices." Michael checked his expensive watch. "I have to go. There's a big company meeting this afternoon. Emergency board session. The kind of thing that could change everything for people who've earned their place at the table." He headed for the door, then turned back. Maybe it's time you learned what real success looks like instead of expecting other people to carry you. The door closed behind him with a soft click. I sat in my living room for a long time after he left, listening to the sound of his BMW pulling out of my driveway. Then I walked to my bedroom, opened the old wooden chest where I keep my important papers, and pulled out a folder marked Southwest Building Solutions, Corporate Documents. That evening, I made phone calls I hadn't made in years. The first call was to Harold Chen, my corporate attorney. Harold had handled all of Roberto's and my business affairs for over 3 decades. He was one of only 3 people who knew the full extent of my ownership in Southwest Building Solutions. Harold was 68 years old now, a distinguished man with silver hair and wire-rimmed glasses, who had never once condescended to me the way some lawyers do to their elderly clients. "Harold, it's Donna. I need you to prepare some paperwork." "Of course, Donna. What can I help you with?" "It's time for me to take an active role in the company. I want to call an emergency board meeting for tomorrow afternoon." There was a long pause. I could hear Harold shuffling papers in his office, probably looking at his calendar. "Donna, are you sure about this? Once Michael learns the truth about the ownership structure, well, there's no going back from something like this." "My son made his feelings very clear today, Harold. He told me not to expect a penny from him because I need to learn to live within my means. I think it's time he learned what my means actually are." "What exactly do you want to accomplish in this meeting?" I looked at the financial documents spread across my kitchen table. Annual reports, profit and loss statements, executive compensation packages. All the paperwork that showed exactly how successful Southwest Building Solutions had become under my silent ownership. I want to remind everyone who actually owns this company, and I want to make some changes to how it's run. "What kind of changes?" "The kind that put family values back where they belong, at the center of everything we do." The second call was to Janet Rodriguez, Southwest Building Solutions, Chief Financial Officer. Janet was 45 years old, a brilliant woman with an MBA from Arizona State, who had been with the company for 8 years. She knew me only as Mrs. Martinez, the owner's representative, who occasionally signed important documents but otherwise stayed out of daily operations. "Janet, this is Donna Martinez. I need you to prepare a complete financial overview for tomorrow's emergency board meeting. Include all executive compensation packages, particularly management-level salaries and bonuses for the past 5 years. Of course, Mrs. Martinez. Should I prepare this for the ownership representative as usual?" "No, Janet. This time I'll be presenting it myself." There was a moment of confusion in Janet's voice. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Martinez. I don't understand. Are you saying you'll be attending the meeting?" "I'm saying I'll be running the meeting." The third call was to Maria Santos, my daughter-in-law's sister, who worked as an executive assistant at one of our partner architectural firms. Maria was 38 years old, a kind woman with warm brown eyes who had always been respectful to me, unlike Christine. We occasionally had coffee together when she was in my neighborhood. "Maria, I need a favor. Could you make sure Christine knows about the board meeting tomorrow? I'd like her to encourage Michael to attend." "Is everything okay, Mrs. Martinez?" "Everything will be fine, mija. Just make sure she knows that major company changes are being announced, the kind that affect executive positions." "Should I tell her anything specific?" "Just tell her that tomorrow's meeting will determine the future leadership of Southwest Building Solutions. Tell her that anyone with ambitions in the company needs to be there." That night, I went through my closet and found the navy blue suit Roberto had bought me for our 30th anniversary. It was a beautiful piece, Tailored wool with silver buttons and a matching jacket that made me feel like the businesswoman I'd always been, even when I was working from my kitchen table. I'd worn it exactly twice. Once to his funeral, and once to sign the final incorporation papers that made me sole owner of the company. It still fit perfectly. I also spent 3 hours reviewing financial documents, board resolutions, and executive reports. I wanted to be fully prepared for what was about to happen. I made notes in the margins, highlighting key figures and decisions that would be relevant to tomorrow's discussion. Before I went to bed, I called one more person, my youngest daughter, Sophia, who lived in Tucson with her husband and 2 children. Sophia was 39 years old, a schoolteacher who had always stayed out of family drama, but who knew how Michael had been treating me. "Mama, what's wrong? You sound different." "Nothing's wrong, mija. I just wanted to tell you that things are going to change tomorrow. Your brother's going to learn some things about our family that might surprise him." "What kind of things?" "The kind of things that remind people where they came from and who helped them get where they are." Before I went to bed, I looked at myself in the bathroom mirror. The woman staring back at me had gray hair, wrinkles around her eyes, and hands that showed the wear of 7 decades of life. But for the first time in months, she looked like someone who remembered her own worth. The Southwest Building Solutions boardroom was located on the 15th floor of a glass tower in downtown Phoenix. I had been in that room exactly 6 times, in 45 years, always quietly, always in the background, always introduced as Roberto's wife, or the ownership representative. When I stepped off the elevator wearing my navy suit and carrying Roberto's old leather briefcase, I could see the surprise on the security guard's face. He knew me as the elderly woman who occasionally came in to sign papers, not as someone attending executive meetings. The boardroom was filled with familiar faces, department heads, senior managers, and contractors I'd worked with for years. They all looked puzzled to see me, but they were polite, assuming I was there in some honorary capacity. Michael was already seated at the conference table, looking confident and relaxed in his charcoal suit. When he saw me, his face showed a flash of embarrassment, followed by annoyance. "Mom, what are you doing here? This is a private corporate meeting." Before I could answer, Harold entered the room and took his place at the head of the table. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for attending this emergency board meeting. I've called you here today to announce some significant changes to the corporate leadership structure of Southwest Building Solutions." Harold looked around the room, making eye contact with each person present. "First, I want to introduce you to someone you all know, but may not have fully understood the role of. This is Donna Martinez, and she is the sole owner and majority shareholder of Southwest Building Solutions. She has been since the company's incorporation in 1978. The silence in the room was absolute. I could hear the air conditioning humming and the distant sound of traffic 15 floors below. Harold continued. "Mrs. Martinez has chosen to maintain a low profile for the past several years, allowing the management team to operate the company according to established procedures. However, she has decided that it's time for her to take a more active role in corporate governance." I stood up and walked to the head of the table. Every eye in the room followed me, but I was only looking at Michael. His face had gone completely white. "Thank you, Harold." My voice was steady and clear. "I want to start by saying that I'm proud of what this company has accomplished. We've built homes for thousands of families, created jobs for hundreds of workers, and contributed millions of dollars to our local economy." I opened Roberto's briefcase and pulled out a financial report. "I'm also proud of our management team. You've turned Southwest Building Solutions into a company that generates over $40 million in annual revenue. That success belongs to all of you." I looked directly at Michael. "However, I've become concerned about some attitudes within our leadership that don't reflect the values this company was built on. Values like respect for family, loyalty to the people who gave you opportunities, and understanding that success means lifting others up, not pushing them down. Michael's mouth opened slightly, but no sound came out. I continued. Yesterday, someone in this room told me that I needed to learn to live within my means. That person suggested I had made poor choices and should stop expecting help from family, members who have earned their success. The room was so quiet I could hear people breathing. I found that perspective interesting, especially since it came from someone whose entire career, salary, and lifestyle has been funded by the company I own. I opened the financial report. Michael Martinez, Vice President of Operations, current. Annual salary, $120,000. Annual bonuses over the past 5 years, averaging $35,000. Company car allowance, $12,000 annually. Health insurance, life insurance, and retirement. Contributions, approximately $18,000 in annual value. Michael looked like he was going to be sick. Total company investment in Mr. Martinez over the past 12 years, approximately $1.4 million. Money that came directly from profits generated by Southwest Building Solutions, which I own entirely. I closed the report and looked around the room. I built this company to provide for families and to create opportunities for people to grow and succeed. But success without character is meaningless. Success without gratitude is hollow. And success that makes you believe you're too important to care for the people who made your success possible, well, that's not success at all. I didn't fire Michael that day. Instead, I announced that he would be moving to a new position, regional manager for our New Mexico operations, based out of Albuquerque. It was still a good job with good pay, but it was 300 miles away from his Scottsdale lifestyle and his wife's social circle. I also announced that I would be taking the title of CEO, and that all executive decisions would now require my approval. The meeting ended with handshakes and congratulations from people who suddenly understood who had been signing their paychecks all along. Michael left without speaking to me. 3 days later, he came to my house. This time, he didn't comment on my furniture or my coffee pot. He sat in my living room and cried like the little boy I remembered from 40 years ago. "Mom, I'm so sorry. I had no idea. I never meant to. Mijo," I said, taking his hands in mine. "I didn't reveal the truth to embarrass you or to prove a point. I did it because I needed you to remember who you are and where you came from." I was such an idiot. Christine is furious. She's talking. About divorce. She says I ruined everything. You didn't ruin anything that was worth keeping. Michael looked up at me with tears in his eyes. What happens now? Now you decide what kind of man you want to be. The kind who measures success by how much distance he can put between himself and his family, or the kind who understands that real wealth comes from the people who love you. 6 months later, Michael took the job in Albuquerque. Christine did. File for divorce. But that turned out to be a blessing. Michael discovered that without the pressure to maintain an artificial lifestyle, he actually enjoyed his work again. He started calling me every Sunday, just like he used to. And me? I still live in my small house with the chipped paint and the worn carpet. I still clip coupons and drive my old Honda. But now Michael knows why I live this way. It's not because I have to. It's because I choose to. Because the most important things in life don't cost money. Sometimes the people who underestimate you are the ones who need the lesson most. And sometimes, the greatest gift you can give someone you love is showing them the difference between having money and having worth.